In early July of this year, my guest, Andrew Smith, penned a commentary on TabbFORUM called Call the Sheriff. There are bad guys out there. Andrew, I want to talk to you more about your piece. It really focused on sanctions reporting and sanctions monitoring and technology around what can be done about sort of staying on top of the sanctions question. You know, in today's marketplace, why should I really even care about this? Is it an issue that we should be looking at?
Let's just put things in perspective in terms of sanctions. In 2009, the US authorities, principally through OFAC, reached and levied fines and settlements of about $5 million. Last year, 12-13, that number got up to $4 billion. That's 4,000.
That's a 4,000% increase, isn't it?
It's phenomenal. So if ever there was a growth industry in terms of regulation, the sanctions monitoring piece is becoming a bigger issue. We see sanctions being used as an ever-increasing tool to try and meet various political ends. So we see that number, the potential for that number going up, not down.
Is this a problem solely for the United States, or is it also now a European problem? I do recall in your piece you talked about the FCA coming out with a study basically saying that the Europeans are not up to par on this. Is this going to be more and more prevalent in the European market space?
Well, I think that point was made very clearly in the FCA report. It came out a few weeks ago in London. And truthfully, they had very little good to say about how well UK banks were doing in terms of complying with AML standards and with sanctions monitoring. They frankly said there was a lot of heavy lifting that needed to be doing. So if I look at our experience in the UK, they're still very early days. If I look at what's happening here in the US, in terms to the extent to which those fines and settlements are evidence. I mean, they're anecdotal.
Right.
But let's not forget in the last 12 months, $4 billion of fines and settlements have been levied. That would suggest that that this is a real and growing problem.
Now, this is just not in sort of anti-money laundering. This is also sort of now we're starting to verge on with the new regulations coming down the pike for fixed income, sort of the know your client sort of sanctions as well. This is all based on sort of these international monitoring regimes designed to affect change globally, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I think what we're seeing more and more, I mean, let me give you some headline numbers. At any point in time, there are about 40,000 names on sanctions lists. Those be countries, those be corporations, those be individuals. And sure, one might think, well, it's easy. It's countries like North Korea, countries like, for you in the US, right, Cuba, Syria, Iran. But actually, there are second-order names that appear on those lists, because it's not just the companies that necessarily trade directly. There can be second or third-order relationships. So, for example, it's very, very possible that if a US bank acquired a UK bank, for argument's sake, and the UK bank was providing banking services of any description to a Cuban client, that US bank would now be running foul of US regulation.
And it also gets even more complicated when you start taking second, third, fourth order, when you start looking at names, because even naming conventions can be very complicated. So this becomes a very technologically challenging prospect, doesn't it?
Well, it's exponential. As I said, there were 40,000 names on the list. But if we start looking at different spellings,
right,
if we start looking at different languages,
different alphabets, Cyrillic, Chinese, Japanese, I mean, it gets very complicated very quickly.
There's all sorts of various fuzzy logic combinations that kick in. We've done some math based on the databases we've checked. At any point in time, there could be as much as 4 billion different search criteria out there.
Well, if I am here in the United States and I'm watching this video and I'm thinking, okay, this is something we need to get on top of it, what should I be looking for with it when it regards to solution? Is this sort of an outsourced solution? Is this a technology solution? Is it a process solution? What should I be looking at to try to get on top of this challenge?
Well, it could be all of the above. At the end of the day, whether it's US, UK, UN, irrespective of the legal jurisdiction, there are some common process elements that need to be in place. The onus is on you, your organization, to be able to prove that you have a process in place where you have done a series of formal checks that it's a repeatable process, that it's consistent, and that it's accurate. So you need to be able to have a degree of auditability with escalation in place where if someone is flagged up, whether they're flagged up because they're a false positive or whether they're flagged up because they are a restricted party, that various decisions, formal decisions, are taken off to either accept someone's business or decline someone's business. There is a process that needs to be in place. Now, whether that's something that you take in-house in terms of the underlying technology, well, that's a buy versus build, that's an in-house versus outsourced decision. There are a number of good solutions out in the marketplace today. Of course, you could do it on your own, but at any point in time, there are 100 or so public databases that you would have to go out and manually check yourself. And from our experience, those databases typically change every day.
Yeah, I would imagine the permutations on that get very quickly very complicated and very difficult to manage. So, I mean, a solution that sort of encompasses all that would probably be most beneficial for most folks.
I would say it's a non-trivial problem.
This seems like a topic that's not going to go away, and as a matter of fact, it's going to get more complicated as we move forward. Andrew, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on TabbFORUM.
Thank you.